And I'd like to thank everyone for joining our Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer Training webinar for the 2016 Capitol Hill Advocacy Day. I'm Margaret Killmeyer, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I am the Programs Director for Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer. In just a moment, I will be introducing the President and Founder, Debbie Zelman, to provide an update on the Foundation. And then we will be joined by Camille Bonta, our Advocacy Consultant, and Kristin Fitzgerald, our Advocacy Chair, who will conduct the advocacy training. You'll be able to type questions throughout this presentation. You can type your question into the white text box that appears on your screen. And at the conclusion of this presentation, Camille and Kristin will address questions as time allows. If we're unable to answer all of your questions during the time allotted, we will respond to them all in an email that will be sent to all advocates. In addition, the recording of this webinar will be accessible to everyone on our website. I would now like to introduce the President and Founder of Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer, Debbie Zelman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for your involvement with Debbie's Dream Foundation. As many of you know, my story, I was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer in April of 2008. And I think most of you are familiar with me, but for those who aren't, there's some facts up on your screen about me and my diagnosis. But I think also important to know is that it has been almost 8 years. April will be 8 years since I was diagnosed, but I am also still a patient. Next slide. And during the almost 7 years of my advocacy work, I have joined a lot of organizations as a patient advocate, and Debbie's Dream Foundation that I started in April of 2009 is a member of many different coalitions and advocacy groups, many of which are listed on this slide. But most notably, people tell me, is that I appeared on Dr. Oz in a program about stomach cancer. Next slide. So our mission, we have to cover a lot because we are really doing the lion's share of stomach cancer advocacy. We are raising awareness, we are advancing funding for research, providing education and support internationally to patients, families, and caregivers with the ultimate goal to make the cure for stomach cancer a reality. And I always like to send everybody to the website, if you haven't been already, debbiesdream.org, to really look it over. There's so much that is there. Next slide. We have reached many milestones, some of which are listed here, including 29 chapters internationally, events internationally, obviously our Stomach Cancer Capitol Hill Advocacy Day, and the first ever Capitol Hill briefing about stomach cancer. Really notable for this group is the $50 million Department of Defense pot of money through the Peer Review Cancer Research Program. And you'll hear more about how Debbie's Dream has accomplished that, and all of you had a part. We have also directly funded research, and we've given $350,000 in research grant funding. Many of you do participate already through our PrEP program, the Patient Resource Education Program. Either you have come through as a patient, family, or caregiver, or you're now a mentor in that program. So we appreciate that, and it's of course all free, as well as our symposia and webinars and everything on our website that's available there. Next slide. And on this note, I'm going to end on this wonderful slide showing many, many of you. The bottom slide is our first Advocacy Day. The second one on the top there is our second. You can see how our numbers are growing, growing, growing. And just a lot of amazing people, and you're the ones that are getting our voice heard and getting out there and advocating for stomach cancer. So we thank you very much. And on that note, I'm going to turn back over the webinar to Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And of course, as many of you know, our Capitol Hill Advocacy Day is our next upcoming event, but you can also find the other upcoming events on our website under the Events tab from our homepage. Some highlights for you here coming up is the Youth Leadership Council Essay Contest, which is going to be taking place nationally for students to given their submission, the application open period is March 1st. And then on April 9th of 2016 will be our Stomach Cancer Education Symposium, which is taking place live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but it is also internationally webcast. So if you are not able to travel in or have conflicting events, we will be broadcasting that if you're able to participate in some but not all, or we will also be recording that and putting that on our lecture library. Also that same evening is our Dream Makers Gala, which is a celebration of the anniversary of the start of Debbie's Dream Foundation. It's a terrific event, and we hope that you'll all be able to join us. Then later this year is our second annual Dream Big Luncheon in September, also in Fort Lauderdale. In 2016, Denim for Debbie is taking place on November 2nd, and this is essentially a Jeans Day, where you can raise awareness either locally through your community, your work, or even through schools in your area. If you have children who are attending a school and they'd like to participate in a Jeans Day, this is a great way to raise awareness for stomach cancer and for Debbie's Dream Foundation. And then in Fayetteville, North Carolina on November 5th is our third annual North Carolina Golf Tournament. And so this is what our Advocacy Day is about. For 3 years now, and this is coming up as our 4th year, hundreds of advocates have come to Washington to ask Congress to invest more federal resources in gastric cancer research. Specifically, we've asked the Congress to include stomach cancer among those cancers eligible for research funding under the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program, and we were successful in doing that. And the result is that more federal research dollars will be awarded to stomach cancer researchers, which would not have been able to have happened without DDF advocates like you. So thank you so much for joining us for this important event and returning to Washington for our 2016 Advocacy Day. And through your participation, we can help change the course of gastric cancer research in this country. And here's a brief overview of our itinerary. Once we arrive in Washington Wednesday morning, starting at 8 a.m., there's going to be a welcome session where we'll have breakfast. You'll be able to meet and greet the other advocates, and then we'll provide a brief DDF annual update. And then from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., we will be joined by representatives from Lilly Oncology, who will be presenting a patient's journey regarding patient and personal advocacy through the development of oncology treatments. We will then take a break for lunch from 12 to 1, and then have an opportunity to take a group photo like one of the ones that you saw earlier in this presentation. And then for the afternoon from 1:15 to 4:15, we're going to have 3 separate breakout sessions that the advocates will all rotate through. So we'll break up into groups of 3, or rather 3 groups, and each group will rotate through to have an opportunity to attend each of the different sessions that are available, including an opportunity to share your story, a round table where we can talk about gaps in care and needs of the advocates, patients, caregivers, and family members so that we can work on changing the course of gastric cancer, as well as an advocate training session that will be led by Camille, who will be joining us later in this presentation. Then we'll take a brief break and then regroup at 5 o'clock for a Capitol Hill cocktail reception. And then that evening from 7 to 9 will be dinner for all of the advocates to come together, and we'll also be giving some last-minute training tips for Thursday. And now what you see on your screen here is the itinerary for Thursday, the day on the Hill. We'll start first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock with breakfast, and again a few more last-minute training tips. And then we'll depart to take photos at the Hill. And then all of the scheduled meetings that Camille will be sharing some more information with you. And then we'll regroup at 6 o'clock that evening to celebrate everyone's success, share stories about how your day went, and to enjoy a great meal. And here's just a few points for everyone to be aware of. There will be a professional photographer who's there on behalf of DDF and taking some photos. You may, of course, also bring your own personal cameras to take pictures of you at your meetings with and without the members of the congressional offices. And you please, if you could share your photos that you take during the day by email to events@debbiesdream.org. We're also going to be joined by a videographer who is going to be filming both days, Wednesday and Thursday. And if you feel comfortable, we really do appreciate if you are interested in doing a one-on-one interview where you have an opportunity to tell your story on camera. And that's not only your personal patient journey, but also, some interview questions about what brings you to Advocacy Day and your involvement in Debbie's Dream Foundation. So if you know in advance that you would like to be filmed, please send an email to events@debbiesdream.org, or you can also approach us during the Capitol Hill Advocacy Day during those times, and we will arrange a time for you to meet with a videographer. In order for us to have everyone participate and to be in these photos and videos, we do need and ask that each of you will sign and return a media release. These are going to be individually emailed out to all of the advocates, but additionally you can go onto our webpage under the Advocacy Day event page, and you'll see a button there that says the Advocate Resource Center, and there's a link for it there on your screen as well. If you can please follow that link, you'll be able to download that media release form that you can fill out and either return it in advance or bring it to you with you at the event. We'll also have blank copies at the event for you to complete as well. And so with that, I would like to now introduce Camille Bonta, who is joining us. She is our consultant in Washington with Summit Healthcare Consulting. Camille? And Camille, it looks like your line is muted. If you're able to click the button for your audio, there we go.
There we go. Thank you, Mary Margaret.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mary Margaret. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't have any feedback there. Thank you all for being part of Debbie's Dream Foundation's advocacy efforts and for taking time away from your families and your work to travel to Washington, D.C. in February. Certainly you are the voice of stomach cancer. And when you go to Capitol Hill on February 11th, you will be increasing awareness of stomach cancer through your own experiences. And you'll be educating members of Congress and their staff about the lack of foundational knowledge about stomach cancer. And you'll be asking for more research funding that can lead to better treatments and maybe someday a cure. Next slide. Hill meetings are being scheduled for you based upon your registration information. Your meeting schedules will be provided to you when you arrive in Washington, and background materials will be also provided to you upon your arrival. These materials will assist you in preparing for and conducting your Hill meeting. But new this year, as already referenced, an Advocate Resource Center has been created on the Debbie's Dream Foundation website for you to access all the Hill meeting materials in advance of your travels to D.C. You can find this resource center under the Upcoming Events tab on the website. Scroll down to the 2016 Advocacy Day and click on Event Information. You will also receive folders with fact sheets to provide to your congressional offices. Also new this year, at the request of many of our advocates, we'll be making plenty of extra folders for Capitol Hill in case you would like to stop by other congressional offices from your state in between your scheduled visits. Next slide. So you may be wondering what to wear on your Hill visits. Men are asked to wear a jacket, a long sleeve button-down shirt, and a tie, and women a suit, pants or skirt, or a dress. We ask that you not wear jeans and try to avoid anything such as big belt buckles or large pieces of metal jewelry that might hinder getting through security, just as if you were going through airport screening. If you are a veteran or active military, please consider wearing your uniform given our efforts to raise awareness about the link between stomach cancer and military service. Most importantly, please wear comfortable shoes because you're going to be doing a lot of walking on Thursday. You will receive a lapel pin to wear and distribute to members of Congress and their staff. And lastly, you're encouraged to wear periwinkle or any shade of blue and to avoid bright colors for your group photo on Capitol Hill. Next slide. Now let's move to the Hill meeting. Meeting with a member of Congress doesn't need to be a stressful ordeal as long as you're well prepared, know what you're going to say, and can keep the discussion on message. It's always very important to stay on message. While members of Congress and their staff are genuinely concerned about their constituents' views, they also don't like to commit to requests on the spot. And they may say everything and anything to avoid a commitment, but it's up to you to stay on message and press your request politely yet firmly. Now, when you sit down for your meeting with your member of Congress or the congressional staffer, start by introducing yourself. Make sure you say where you live and that you're visiting on behalf of Debbie Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer. If your visit is a repeat visit with a lawmaker or congressional staffer, remind them that you have met before. After introductions, explain what led you to becoming an advocate for stomach cancer research. Next slide. Before you state what action you want the member of Congress to take an opportunity to say thank you if appropriate. Included among the background materials that will be provided to you will be a list of lawmakers who have been helpful to Debbie Dream Foundation in the past. This information will also be posted on the Advocate Resource Center. When making your request, you can use facts and figures to make your point, but don't overwhelm the lawmaker or staffer with too much data. You will have folders with fact sheets to provide your congressional offices, which will be full of numbers and details. So when you're face-to-face with the lawmaker or the staffer, use that opportunity to use your experience as the tool of persuasion. Next slide. Make sure before you end your meeting that you close the deal. Ask the member of Congress or the staff person if he or she will support your request. If they can't give you an on-the-spot answer, please let them know that you will be following up. And lastly, remember to say thank you. Make sure they have your contact information and offer to be a resource. Next slide. For the Advocacy Day this year, we're going to have two primary requests. First, we will be asking members of Congress to support maintaining the inclusion of stomach cancer in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program. You will do this by asking the member of Congress to sign a letter to the Appropriations Committee with this request, or to make the request directly to the committee. The House letter is already posted in the Advocate Resource Center. This letter will again be led this year by Congresswoman Lois Frankel and Congresswoman Elena Ross-Layton in the House. In the Senate, the letter will be led by Senator Hirono, and that letter will be posted to the Advocate Resource Center soon. Next slide. You may find that you need to give lawmakers and staff a brief overview of the peer-reviewed cancer research program. The program is run through the Department of Defense under the umbrella of the Congressional Directed Medical Research Program. The peer-reviewed cancer research program was first funded by Congress in 2009 and supports research into specific cancers as designated by Congress with relevance to military service members. The program tends to support high-risk, high-reward research and complements NIH research. Next slide. Over the past few years, there has been a significant increase in the amount of funding appropriated by Congress to this program. In fact, the program's budget doubled from fiscal year 2014 to 2015 from 25 to 50 million. Thanks to all of your collective efforts, stomach cancer was first included as eligible in the program in fiscal year 2015, and it will remain eligible in fiscal year 2016 and compete with 12 other cancers for funding. Just over 30 stomach cancer research proposals were submitted for fiscal year 2015, and research awards will be announced this spring. Next slide. We have been able to make a very persuasive case for why stomach cancer should be included in the peer-reviewed cancer research program. Stomach cancer is a malignancy that has been recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs as presumed to be service-connected based on hazardous exposure to ionizing radiation. However, more significantly, research studies have shown that U.S. soldiers living under field condition, means serving abroad, may be at greater risk of H. pylori infection. And this is really significant because H. pylori is a primary identified cause of stomach cancer. And I'll just add that every year, There are many cancers that are competing to try to get into this program, and it is remarkable that stomach cancer was able to be included last year, or 2 years ago, and that's because of the strong persuasive case that we've been able to make with respect to the connection to military service. Next slide. The other ask on Capitol Hill will be to encourage lawmakers to urge the National Cancer Institute to issue a request for applications for stomach cancer research. And this request builds on the success that we had last year with the inclusion of stomach cancer language in the report to accompany the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Appropriations Bill. Next slide. In the next 2 slides, you'll see both the House and Senate report language, which encouraged the National Cancer Institute to issue a request for applications for stomach cancer research. And we should consider this a significant victory on which we must capitalize during our visit. We are working to generate a congressional sign-on letter similar to the Department of Defense letter, and if and when we are able to get that moving, we will have that posted on the Advocate Resource Center. So here's the House language, and next slide you can briefly look at the Senate report language. And let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I assume that most of you are familiar with the National Cancer Institute, but briefly, it is one of 27 institutes and centers at the National Institutes of Health. And Debbie's Dream Foundation is working to increase its visibility with the National Cancer Institute and to encourage the advancement of knowledge gained through the Cancer Genome Atlas through the dedication of additional research funding. Next slide. Now, while you can read through the fact sheets and other information provided on the Advocate Resource Center, I want to take a few moments just to cover a few key statistics. In 2016, it's estimated that more than 26,000 Americans will be diagnosed with stomach cancer, and more than 11,000 will die from this disease. About 80% of patients are asymptomatic during the early stages of stomach cancer, which often leads to a late diagnosis. And unfortunately, at stage 4, the 5-year survival rate is only about 4%, and the overall 5-year survival rate is 30%. Now, it's important beyond these statistics to emphasize that the incidence rates of stomach cancer in those, particularly in whites aged 25 to 39, increased by about 66% between 1977 and 2006. And this data is significant because the expected frequency of stomach cancer overall has declined over the past 80 years. So for those of you who have attended Capitol Hill meetings in the past, I'm sure that you can attest to the fact that when you sit down with Capitol Hill staffers or members of Congress, you start out the conversation with their knowing very little about this disease. So a big part of what you're going to be doing when you're on the Hill is educating members of Congress and their staff about this disease. And what I have often found is that many of these young staffers believe that this is a cancer that only happens in those who are older. And so we have an important opportunity to talk to them about the incidence of this disease in younger populations and our lack of understanding of why we're seeing some growth in this disease in these younger populations. Next slide, please. So when you share the need for increased stomach cancer research funding through the National Cancer Institute, please explain that the per cancer deaths, stomach cancer receives the least amount of federal research funds of any cancer. And without a targeted research investment in stomach cancer, researchers can't compete against more well-established cancers for a limited pot of money. And consequently, cancer researchers don't want to enter the field of stomach cancer, and so taken together, this doesn't paint a very promising picture for the future of stomach cancer research, and is why we need your help on Capitol Hill to press for a dedicated funding stream for stomach cancer research at the National Cancer Institute, and is why we're asking for a request for applications. Next slide. So the overarching message that I hope that you will lead with the congressional staff and the members of Congress that you meet with is that really for stomach cancer patients, research means survival. With very limited treatment options currently available, it's important to impress upon our lawmakers about the importance of dedicating more research resources to this deadly disease. Next slide. And finally, we have some homework for you between now and when you travel to Washington, D.C., and I'm just going to run through these very quickly. Draft a script, which also could be the story that we've asked you to draft for the packet that is going to be distributed to congressional members and their staff. You should have received an email from me yesterday encouraging you, reminding you to get those stories to me by this Thursday. Please take time to review the Advocacy Day materials that have been posted on the Advocate Resource Center. If you have any difficulty finding that resource center, please let me or Candy or Mary Margaret know, and we will direct you there. We will continue to update those materials right up until the week of the Advocacy Day. You can learn more about your member of Congress, both on the senators and your representative, by going to www.house.gov and www.senate.gov and navigating to the website of your members of Congress. Please bring PDF business cards with you if you have them. If not, general business cards will be provided to you upon your arrival, and you can put your contact information on those cards for your congressional offices. Just to reiterate, make sure you pack comfortable shoes. Comfort because you're going to be doing a lot of walking is more important than style. And get excited about joining your fellow advocates to make a difference. I hope that you will walk away from your day on Capitol Hill energized and feeling like you really have made a difference in the future of stomach cancer research. And lastly, please take time to tweet and post your experience on Capitol Hill and the advocacy days in general. Suggested posts and information will be emailed to you, but it's also available on the Advocate Resource Center. And as a reminder, if you take photos, please send them so we can use them for our advocacy materials in the future. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Mary Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille, for that very informative presentations. And what I'll do now is to begin to read the questions that we received during your talk. And the first is, what if I am asked a question that I don't know the answer to?
Sure, and I just want to emphasize that Kristin Fitzgerald is also on the line, and so I will ask her to chime in at any point as well. If you get asked a question and you don't know the answer to it, it is perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know the answer to that question, but let me get back to you with an answer. And then come to me or Kristin or Debbie or my colleague Jeff Worth, who will be there, and let us know what that question was, and we can help you formulate a response. Or you will be asked to complete Hill visit report forms. Those report forms will be in your packets when you arrive, but they are also posted online, and we go through all those report forms. So if it's an urgent question, reach out to one of us on site or email, and we will get back to you right away, or you could include it in your Hill visit report form.
And can I just add, and I'm Kristin, for those of you who don't know me, I am, my involvement with stomach cancer is that I've been involved with it over the past 7 or 8 years. My husband and I were long-time congressional staffers for the Illinois delegation, and now I live in Illinois. My husband was diagnosed in 2008 with stomach cancer at the age of 36, and he passed away at the age of 37 the following year. And I have dedicated a lot of my time, given my experience on the Hill, to turning that experience and expertise into advocacy for stomach cancer. And I want to emphasize to you that you might go through this presentation and be concerned that there's a lot of facts and figures that you don't know or that you are worried about being an expert on. And in truth, what we are participating in at an advocacy day is really democracy at its very best, in that we are expressing to our members of Congress and those who represent us the real impact that stomach cancer has in their district. And that's your main point. And you are no matter what facts and figures you have, you're able to convey that story to your members. And so don't be worried that you have to be an expert. Really, we are trying to express very simple messages to them. The fact that stomach cancer is growing in younger people, the fact that it is very, very deadly, what a small amount of research is directed towards it, and the catastrophic impact of that, both on the disease and personally. And that's where you come in, is expressing that real personal impact. And as we convey these stories, what we're looking for and what we're really attempting to do is to help our members of Congress not just be agreeing to take an action or agreeing to support one letter, but to become an advocate for this cause. And so that's what we're really hoping to do, and to continue to build those relationships so that they can advocate to others that this is an important issue to address. So that's kind of what we're hoping for. So in terms of if they ask an expert question that you don't know, that's okay. You're accomplishing that main goal of expressing the impact in their district, for the folks that they represent, and helping them to become a champion of our cause.
Thank you so much, Kristin, also for joining in that answer, and also for being with us today. And to the points you were making, there is another question about, will I be getting talking points for my meetings, or do I need to take notes during a training to have these statistics and facts?
So all of the information, talking points, and other supporting materials can all be found on the Advocate Resource Center. So all of the information covered in today's slides is available on the Advocate Resource Center. And Candy, Mary Margaret, will you be posting this slide presentation on the Resource Center as well, for folks to go back and re-review it?
Yes, that is the plan. We are recording it, so if once it goes up onto the website, we should be able to email everyone to notify them that it is there. We may also be able to, in addition, send it via email as an attachment. So we'll work out those details, but we will send the information of how to access the recording after today's meeting.
The advocates will also have, and so that will be very helpful for preparation, that you can look at. You can take be studying, but as you go into the meetings, you'll also have a folder that you'll present to the congressional staff or member that you meet with, and that will include all those documents as well, so that you're able to refer to them and highlight those things that you want to among that information, so that they can have that to keep, but you'll have it to refer to in the meeting.
Okay, great. And another question that's come in is, will I be meeting with delegates from another state?
So you will be meeting with your 2 senators. You'll be meeting with your representative. If there are other advocates from your state who are attending and they don't share your representative, we'll make every effort to ensure that all the advocates from the same state, with some exceptions, go to Hill meetings together. So you may be meeting with somebody else's representative. Also, there have been some requests by advocates to meet with members of Congress who are not from their state, and that was noted when you completed your Advocacy Day registration. And then lastly, we are working to schedule some meetings with committee staff, Appropriations Committee staff, and some of you may be asked to participate in those meetings as well.
Okay, great.
And I should add that you'll get your schedule because the scheduling process, and particularly because Congress, the federal government is closed, congressional offices are not open right now because of the snowstorm. Hopefully, business as usual will kick in sometime mid this week. So we probably all the meeting requests have gone out, and I would expect that we'll start hearing back from offices that we haven't heard from yet mid to late week. But the scheduling process is a very fluid process. There's a lot of shuffling around of various pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we can fit in all of your meetings, and so and we try to organize it so we have all your House meetings on either in the morning or the afternoon together, and then your Senate meetings in another time frame of the day, so you're not running back and forth between the House and the Senate. So these schedules often are in flux until just days before the Advocacy Day. So you, like I said, you will receive your meeting itineraries on site, but plan on meetings with the folks that you either indicated during the registration process, and then of course your representative and your 2 senators.
So it sounds like each advocate has a minimum of 3 meetings.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And I would urge you as well. I would urge you as well, when you get your schedule, to spend a little time getting to know the other people that you'll be meeting with and practicing kind of how you want the meeting to go, so that you're able to seamlessly replicate that when you get to those congressional offices.
Okay, and so that, to also kind of follow up on that section, there's another question that is asking, how much detail should I share about my personal story, and how much time can I expect to have?
So what you should go into the meetings expecting is that your meetings could, depending on the member of Congress or the staffer that you're meeting with and their availability that day, it could be 10 minutes or it could be 30 minutes. And so what I would suggest is, especially if there are a number of you in a meeting, to briefly state why you're an advocate, and then make sure that you give yourself the time to make your request, because we want to make sure we get our key messages and requests across to the folks that we're meeting with. And then in the course of the conversation, certainly you can weave in additional details of your experiences or why you're on Capitol Hill. But I would, it's very important for them to understand why you're there and what your connection to stomach cancer is. But please don't go in expecting that every meeting is going to be 30 minutes, because that would certainly be on the longer end of a meeting. I would go in with the expectation that your meeting could only last 15 minutes. And if you get longer than 15 minutes, then that's really great.
And what you can do is, if you have some additional thoughts about something that's really less introductory information but more anecdotal about the particular situation, you may be able to work that in when you're talking about particular points. For example, when you're talking about the real need for research and the hope that they'll sponsor requests for applications for stomach cancer, you can add in something like, you know, when we met with our doctor, they said, gosh, it's too bad you don't have breast cancer because we have so few opportunities for stomach cancer treatments. And that's an actual comment from a doctor. And that's the kind of thing that would be helpful to interject as you're discussing the importance of additional research for additional treatment.
Those are great points. And then another question coming in about the specific meetings is, will we be given state-specific cancer statistics that may help build our case? Sorry, I'm laughing because I almost didn't get that
out. Sure, yes. The answer is yes, and that information is posted on the Advocate Resource Center. So there are two links. There's a link to more information on the Advocate Resource Center, but there is also a document that lists the rates of stomach cancer incidence and death by state. So please visit the Advocate Resource Center, and if you don't find what you're looking for there, please let us know.
Perfect. And would it be a good idea to ask the legislative assistant or the senator or congressperson that they are meeting with how much time that they have set aside when they start the meeting? Would that be a good tactic?
Oftentimes, if a staffer or so actually, let me back up. If you're meeting with a member of Congress, a lot of times what will happen is that the meeting with the member of Congress will be very brief. And then you may have an opportunity to spend more time with the congressional staffer. If you're meeting with a congressional staffer and they, have a really tight schedule, a lot of times they will say that up front. So I would just go into the meeting with the assumption that you probably have about 15 minutes. And then if you get more time with that staffer or with that member of Congress, then use it to your advantage. But I wouldn't go in and start off the meeting by asking the staffer how much time they have. Instead,
I completely agree with that. You don't want to limit yourself at the beginning, and I think by asking that, they may think, oh dear, this group is going to want a lot of time or something of the kind. So I wouldn't ask that up front. I also just want to say one thing about meeting with members. I want to tell you that as a staffer, I have been in meetings with members in the hallway, in conference rooms outside of an ongoing committee hearing, walking to the floor, all those kinds of things. Those things are possible. If you are able to meet with a member, they are very busy. Votes will be called right in the middle of it. Hearings will be scheduled in the middle of it. And it's a privilege and an honor for us to be able to meet with members wherever we are and try as much as you can not to be distracted by the ongoing chaos of the congressional process, which is always there. So expect that those kinds of things might be a possibility. And if they are, adjust. And then we'll be so thrilled if we have quietly conducted meetings that are in a congressional office. And as Camille said, even if your time with the member is short, you are usually able, if that is the case, to follow up additionally with a staff member so that you can re-emphasize particular points that might get lost in a little bit more of a, the situation with the member where it's a little bit rushed.
And I would encourage everyone to practice your elevator speech. Right? You're going to have a little bit of a longer, pitch for, when you sit down with the staffer. Practice your elevator speech. If you got into the elevator and your member of Congress was standing there and you're going, 10 floors up, what do you want to say before they step off the elevator? What are the 1 or 2 points that you want to get across? So I would, because that is exactly what might happen. As Kristin was saying, they may step out of the hearing. You may walk with them to the floor, walk with them, as they're, going from, one thing to the next, or they may just step in very briefly. They may not even sit down. What do you want to convey in that very brief period of time?
Those are all really great tips. Thank you. And I know that during our trainings on Wednesday in the breakout sessions, one of those sessions will be an advocate training. So would one or both of you mind talking a little bit about what will happen during that training session? So I think maybe there's a little bit more comfort in terms of going into the meetings the following day.
Sure, we'll be going over some of this material again, but we can also do some role playing and set up different scenarios of what to expect in meetings with members of Congress or your congressional staff, and walk you through just a little bit more of the process and what to anticipate when you head to Capitol Hill, and also how to respond to questions. We'll work through that with you and allow it to be a really free-flowing dialogue so we can get particularly new advocates comfortable with heading to the Hill. And certainly there's no reason to be nervous about going to Capitol Hill, but we'll make sure that that you have everything that you need and that you feel comfortable in your role.
And even if you are unable to attend that session in the time leading up to the fly-in, both at the dinner and the breakfast will be offering additional information and advice for advocates. So if you're not able, due to your schedule, to be able to attend those sort of the pre-advocacy sessions, don't worry. We'll still be able to work with you on any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I have now gone through and read all of the questions that were submitted during this presentation, but if anyone who is listening in thinks of an additional question or after we conclude, or if you're listening to this as the recorded version, please submit your questions by email to our Events and Communications Manager, Candy Osman, at events@debbysdream.org, and we will respond to all of those answers. And Candy also will be your point of contact from Debbie's Dream Foundation for the entire Advocacy Day event. And I would like to thank all of our participants for joining us today and committing to travel to Washington for this important event. Thank you to our speakers, Camille, Bonta, and Kristin Fitzgerald, and to Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer's president and founder, Debbie Zelman, for all of them for joining us today. And we are looking forward to seeing each of you in Washington. So thank you so much for your time.